This is what Granville Street looks like. This is Granville Street's sign. This is what you do here. This is a brief history of Granville Street. Granville is named after this guy, Granville Leveson.
It's actually pronounced Granville Lucen Gore, rather different to the way it's spelled in that very English habit.
Wait, who's this guy?
My name is Anthony Norfolk. I'm something of an expert in the history of Granville Street.
Back to the story. Granville was the colonial secretary for the British Empire. In other words, he was responsible for overseeing Canada at that time. So by naming it Granville,
Someone was basically sucking up to him.
and it wasn't just the street. Before Vancouver became Vancouver, it was the town of Granville. But nobody called it that. They just called it Gassie's Town, Gastown for short, after the guy who owned the most popular bar in town, this guy. That is until 1886 when Granville officially became a city.
I guess when they came to establishing the city, they wanted a bigger name.
And who was bigger than Captain George Vancouver? He was an explorer. He wore cool hats. Here he is getting a beatdown with canes for refusing a duel. More importantly, he was a much bigger name than Granville. A month and a half after the name change, Granville Street and the rest of Vancouver burned to the ground. Coincidence?
I think that's very unlikely.
Here's an accurate representation of that fire.
Guy versus fire.
Hiya! Pow! Hiya!
Fire wins.
This is Granville Street in 1907. This is the earliest film ever made of Vancouver. It was discovered 100 years later in a basement in Australia.
It's a miracle it even exists.
This is Part and Fee of Part and Fee Architects. They not only grew fantastic mustaches, their hotels gave Granville its signature look it still has over 100 years later.
And those par and fee hotels, 13 of them, are still there.
And fueled by the city's obsession with vaudeville, the 20s saw the rise of theaters like the Orpheum, the Capitol, and the Commodore Ballroom. Granville soon became Theater Row. And with these theaters came neon. And soon, the entire street lit up in marquee lights until, by the 50s, Vancouver had the second most neon lights in the entire world, with Granville shining brightest as the Great White Way. In 1954, the new Granville Street Bridge was built. The first person to drive over it was the same woman who drove over the old bridge when it first opened in 1909. Both times, she did it at the wheel of a brand new Cadillac.
The Granville Street Bridge was built as part of a planned network of freeways, which never got built.
In 1971, Pacific Center opened to great fanfare but drew business inside, off the street. And soon, the empty lots on the south end turned into strip clubs, adult bookstores, and other questionable establishments.
Well, it definitely gave Granville some character.
And the 80s and 90s brought a rise in more clubs, bars, and of course, more condos. The city kept the nightlife to the south of Robson, dubbing this news section the Entertainment District.
The idea was to avoid noise complaints from the people who were moving into the condos.
Like everything else in the 90s, Granville needed a major makeover. She's All That style reimagining.
It was hoped that by making the street more attractive physically, it would improve the general atmosphere.
And it needed to be done before the 2010 Olympics. Vancouver needed a street to represent itself to the world. A street with history. A street where people could gather, eat, drink, shop, and celebrate. And of course, browse adult bookstores.
Granville Street wouldn't be the special street that it is without that mixture.
So what's in store for the future of Granville Street?
What is important is that Granville Street doesn't lose the very human scale that exists there now and has for 100 years.
Good answer.